By soul, I mean the most essential qualities in a work, and by self, it is the identity of the work rather than the author. Cloning means here creating a typical example of the most essential qualities of a literary work, and reproduction means creating a sample that modifies a work's identity or the self of the work. Here, it's important to discuss part of this important essay, the death of the author. From a linguistic point of view, the author is no more than the I, the writing I. But the author, with the passage of time and with the advent of the skill of writing and criticism, the author is declared dead. And the birth of the reader must be at the cost of the death of the author. And again, Bachtin's chronotope is important here. A chronotope, time, space, or time, place, shapes the meaning because it is where all knots of the narrative come and unite. This is what we mean by a chronotope. A place, somewhere you cannot locate, where time and place merge together. It serves as a frame for events, however, it cannot be located. It stresses the inseparability of space and time and materializes time in space. I quote, "In the literary artistic chronotope, spatial and temporal indicators are fused into one carefully thought out concrete whole. Time, as it were, thickens, takes on flesh, becomes artistically visible. Likewise, space becomes charged and responsive to the movement of time, plot, and history. This intersection of axes and fusion of indicators characterizes the artistic chronotope." That's why you can see that the past and the present can come together, so events, memories from the past can be reconstructed into the present. Folkloric time, the temporal and spatial nature of time, a positive feature of folklore, or folkloric time, as Bachtin maintains, shows itself when it is connected to the earth, especially agriculturally. As if time is, reproduced through planting, through growing things, through the natural processes of production like marriage, copulation, pregnancy, ripening, old age, and death. But one thing is not, favorable here. That is the nature of folkloric time, the cyclicity of folkloric time, which is a negative feature. This negative feature, as Bachtin holds, is cyclicity, as it limits time, since time's forward impulse is limited by the cycle. So we have spring, summer, autumn, and winter. So each cycle is limited. The folkloric form of time, which can be seen as the basis for possible narratives and narrative matrices, passes by fundamental changes marked by the emergence of the individual life and the subsequent weakness in the links of the ancient motifs to the life of nature. Art and literature and chronotopic values. What is the relationship between what Bachtin means by chronotope and art and literature? I quote, "Art and literature are shot through with chronotopic values, varying degrees in scope. Each motif, each separate aspect of artistic work bears value. Time-space defines what can happen and who can act. Simultaneously, existence of phenomenon in literature appears in different periods of time. A place connects time and space. The representational significance of the chronotope is that it is the concretizing representation of time, as it is the basic means to materializing time in space." So, cloning. Is it possible to clone texts? Yes. As it was said, it is possible to clone humans. By cloning, I mean getting an exact replica of the body or the text, a replica that contains the most essential qualities. However, it does not represent the identity of such a body or a text. Cloning binds layers of time with different spaces. That's why Bachtin chronotope is important here. For cloning, an ancient text may be cloned in modern times, and the cloned text may be reproduced in a third text via translation. Cloning of texts is similar to that of humans, and many science fiction narratives represent this topic. We have examples here. The Bones of Time focuses on the good scientific intentions of cloning. The Clone and I discusses how a love relationship develops between Stephanie Parker and his double, the clone. The Boy from Perseal highlights the possibility of having copies of such political leaders as Hitler. The relationship between art and soul. Can clones have souls? Let's see. The capacity to produce art might prove that the clone children have souls and thus moral status. The relationship between art and soul is problematized in Kazuo Ishiguro Never Let Me Go. Clones such as Kathy, Tommy, and Ruth produced art convinced that one's art reflects his soul. Clones' works of art are sold after convincing people that clones have souls and special skills. The irony here lies in what? A clone has a soul but must donate when their time comes. The same can be said about a text which loses its soul if it is cloned. Reproduction. By reproduction, I mean getting a living being that can express feelings, different situations, that shows an identity of its own based on the source identity. For a human body, it's difficult to realize this stage. Or still, we don't reach this stage. However, our produced text self and identity are based on the sources. Universality of the theme and representational forces of time and space. And here we have different examples, and I said that this is a big project, so feel free, if you like this project, to contact me and we can work together on those examples. When the theme is universal, it is easily cloned. However, chronotopic representation does differ from language to language and according to the passage of time. Take this example. Sons and Lovers, written in 1918 by D.H. Lawrence, was cloned in The Mirage, As-Sarab in Arabic, 1948 by Naguib Mahfouz. The Mirage is a representation of the common topic in Sons and Lovers, that's to say, Oedipus complex. Translation of Sons and Lovers in Arabic before the publication of The Mirage is a process of rendering a text from a language to another. With The Mirage in mind, the translator is dealing with a reproduction of the source, almost a second text. Here you see in front of you a symbol way of expressing representation of ideas. You have ideas through translation and through reconstruction of memory. The source text may be cloned or produced, and a third text lingers through translation. So you have the source, you have the clone text or the reproduced text, and the translation of the this reproduced or clone text is the third text that is always there, ready for someone to recreate. Reception of ideas. The theme of hell, paradise, and God's glory have passed from Epistle of Forgiveness, published in 1925 by Abu al-Ala al-Ma'ari, to the Divine Comedy written by Dante, and then it was reproduced into Paradise Lost and Paradise Regained by John Milton. Although the themes are universal, each work has its chronotopic representation. It's time and space that that are fused together. Various translations of these works and their like to the same or to different languages endorse the autonomy of the reproduced texts from the authorial sway as they are framed in the contemporary chronotope within which they play. We reach the conclusion. The temporal and spatial frame within which texts go in a constant flux, playing the role of both signifier and signified upon, and thus creating identities of their own, overshadowing that of the author, highlight the inseparable wholeness of the concept of cloning and reproduction on the one hand, and their chronotopic representation on the other. All texts are open to infinite interpretations, writings, and translations, showing myriads of identities, the fewest of which can safely be traced back to an original author. The references I depended upon, and thank you for listening to my first paper. Now I will take you to an example of this. We may have this paper As an example, what I have already explained, duplicity and irony of fate, family as first home, in Thomas Hardy's Mayor of Casterbridge and Hassan al-Bindari's Salwa Ruh, Soul's Constellation. Why have I chosen those two works? A British writer and an Egyptian one. The span of time covers about 90 to 100 years between both, because in both works and in millions and millions of works, we have underlining patterns. I quote, "The historical and comparative approaches enable us to place a given work precisely by relating it to other works and to other manifestations of culture. We cannot, of course, take all of world literature for our province. The most we can do is to view each as the horizon against which our own tradition may be finally measured. Just as the anthropologists discover similar processes working through diverse cultures, so, through our peculiarly specialized branch of the science of man, underlying patterns are to be found." So that's why we see that many works are cloned from ancient times into modern times, because this underlining pattern or that archetypal figure is here or there, and it is reproduced in different times by different people, okay? Of course, we have an idea about this Bakhtin's chronotype, which is, an essential element in this paper. In both novels chosen, the chronotype is basic to the example of duplicity, which is highlighted by the irony each example shows. Family as home. In Mayor of Casterbridge and in Salwa Ruh, Soul's Constellation, okay, we have two families, and the two families are supposedly to be led by husbands who are fathers. Both fathers, left family and laid down their first home. Let's see together. But first of all, let's explain together, what do I mean by family as home? Home is recognized through space, place, feelings, and is associated with concepts such as house and family. I quote, "The creation of home life inevitably bears the strong imprint of the modern domestic life in which home and family are run together. The concept of home has developed through family relationships, so much so family is seen as home. Between being at home and leaving home, identity changes, and the narrative takes violent twists, among the interstices of which irony-coated duplicity resides. In the above-mentioned novels, the two husbands, that's to say, Henshard and Zaki, crystallize the being and leaving home journey, a journey that is marked by failure of realizing family as first home." Irony. There is a contradiction between what irony is and what it actually refers to, and in this contradiction lies a discrepancy between man's hopes, plans, and desires, and an unexpected reality he never imagines. In reference to fate, irony sometimes stresses the fact that human meaning is limited and twists of action are out of control. And irony of fate can be defined as a strange fatality, which has brought about something quite the reverse of what might have been expected. In dramatic irony, it is said that misfortune is the result of fate, chance, or God. We see irony and duplicity in the Mayor of Casterbridge. First of all, in the protagonist, Henshard. Henshard has two daughters, and the two daughters have the same name, Elizabeth Jane. He has two women, Susan and Lucetta, and he married Susan twice. He left a will with a wish to be remembered no more, and he furnishes the title of the novel, ironically enough. Lucetta has two lovers, Henshard and Fairfree. Newson was thought dead, but he was alive. So we see here, duplicity of life, and the ironic tincture is there. The title is ironic in Salwa Ruh. Why? Because Salwa, who is the beloved Wahid, who is commemorated in the very title, which means soul's consolation, is in fact soul's torture because she died and was not there to support or console her lover, Wahid, of course. Zaki, the father of Wahid and the counterpart of Hinshardin, mayor of Kasabich, has two wives, Wahid's mother and his second wife, and he has two daughters, a biological one, Ni'ma, and an adopted one, Salwa. Salwa has two fathers, her unknown biological father and Zaki, her adopted father. Salwa has two mothers, an unknown mother and an adopted one. Wahid has two sisters, Ni'ma, his biological sister, and Salwa, that then thought his stepsister, but she's not a stepsister because she was adopted by his father. He rejected and was rejected by love. Wafa was jilted by Wahid and went mad. Ironically, Wahid was deprived of Salwa's love since she committed suicide. You see here, time and space, time and place are fused together. And you see people and their, double lives or the situations, double situations in their lives. Life is lost twice because of love. Wafa goes mad and experiences death in life. And Salwa commits suicide and dies. A fatal blow or fatal blows to Wahid. Wahid suffers from tumultuous feelings, his so-called victory over fate, and at the same time, fate's victory over him. He saw that everything was okay after his mother's death and his sister's death. He hated all women. And when Wafa showed her love to him, he jilted her. And he sees himself victorious. But at the same time, he lost his beloved Salwa. So fate won over him. He thinks that Wafa's death in life soothes his excruciating suffering because of his sister's loss. However, Wafa's loss is another blow of fate against him. Salwa shows Wahid a picture of her family, she, her father, and her mother. Here lies the dramatic irony. The encounter... The dramatic irony, of course, let's explain it more, because she says that this is my father, and in fact, the one in the picture is Wahid's father, but he is her adopted father, but she doesn't know, neither, does Wahid. Fatal encounter between Wahid's aunt and his father. The encounter between the aunt and the father marks the climax of the irony of fate. Why? Because when she saw Zaki, everything was now unraveled to us. He was married to her sister, Wahid's mother, long ago. And the aunt herself now is in dilemma because she thought that Salwa, Wahid's beloved, is his sister. Who I see, I cannot believe my eyes. Tawhida, is it you? This is Zaki, Wahid's father. The woman went back many years in the past and saw the man standing before her, a youth. She gave a muffled scream. Who? Zaki. In fact, Zaki married Fathiya in his early youth. Then he left her with two children, Wahid and Ni'ma. Later, he married another woman who was barren, so he adopted Salwa, an orphan child. From here, we now get the idea. It is clear to us that Salwa is not Wahid's stepsister. She is an adopted sister, and he can marry her, but he didn't know at that time, and neither did Salwa, so she committed suicide, and Wahid's life, was a chapter of torture. In both novels, irony of fate and duplicity of life prove to be basic to the main character's failure to realize family as first home, to bear their own responsibilities as husbands and fathers. Detailed discussion of Salwa Ruh's or soul's constellation proves that underlying patterns are recurrent through diverse cultures. Despite spatial and temporal differences, both novels provide a reference and a difference in time and place. A chronotopic frame inside which irony of fate and duplicity can be compared. As I told you, it's an example of many that can be worked on, exercising the concepts of cloning and reproduction. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Actually, the subject is indeed very controversial, and I guess that we